I started working at Vulcan in 2006 at a really weird point in my life. My mom had just passed away. I had just moved back to Austin from Ireland. I was finishing a degree in writing at St. Edward's. I was listening to music without lyrics and watching movies constantly and just generally avoiding human interaction. And Vulcan filled a hole in my life that I didn't think needed filling of family. The people that I met at Vulcan, I still count among like closest friends, and I can't imagine that my life going down without that chapter in it. So many amazing people worked at Vulcan. There were plenty of people that didn't make the cut or seemed great on paper, but then they couldn't process a return or finish talking to a customer long enough to get some work done. But moreover, there were really amazing people that worked at Vulcan with incredible depth of knowledge about not just genre, but also about Austin. I remember learning so much about the customers and the clientele, and also South Austin. I worked mostly at the Elizabeth store. I only really covered shifts at the 29th Street store, but I'd finish ringing someone up, and my coworker would say, "Oh, that guy works at Continental Club. He plays pedal steel, and every time he finishes his set, he comes over and checks out movies. He always pays his late fees. He's amazing." Or that guy was a huge Coke dealer in the 70s, but now he owns half of this neighborhood. You just learn so much about your surroundings from the people coming in and my coworkers and the notes in the computer. Everybody of note had a nickname, an easy way to look up accounts. And I think most people would be disappointed if they didn't have a nickname. A lot of minor celebrities and major celebrities and Austin luminaries would come in the store, and there's plenty of people to list, and I'm sure someone else might bring these people up. But my favorite was David Herman. David Herman would come in, and he had a sense for knowing when someone had figured out that he was David Herman, and he would disappear. So you kind of had to just pretend that you had no idea who he was, even though he clearly knew you did from the last time. But you just kind of pretended and went through the motions and treated him like some regular schmo so that he could check out his movies. There's this idea in our culture about a video store employee and what that means. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of things about it that are true, and in a lot of ways, there's a lot of things about it that people don't know. You don't get paid anything, and everybody kind of basically thinks you shouldn't have your job and they should have it instead of you. So a lot of people would come in with a chip on their shoulder about you even working there in the first place. When I think about Vulcan memories over the years, my favorites have to do with Lars coordinating the trivia challenges between Vulcan and I Love Video. I don't think anybody at Vulcan ever had any idea that there was a rivalry with I Love Video, but I Love Video definitely had an idea that there was a rivalry with Vulcan, and it came out in the most awful ways at these trivia challenges. So the setup was that we had 4 or 5 people up on the stage from each store answering questions from Lars, punishing questions from Lars. Thanks for those. But the people were supposed to be sending us drinks while we were up there to get us drunk. And the I Love guys, I'm pretty sure, were already drunk when they got up there, but they were giving this kind of narrative that the Vulcan guys were film nerds and that they were like awesome Lotharios that were getting laid all the time. But it was just hilarious. I participated in one challenge and bombed horribly. My future wife was even like yelling an answer at me after I missed it. It was humiliating, but watching it was even more exciting. And we crushed it. If I'm saying anything about Vulcan, I really have to talk about Kristen Ellisor. She was the assistant manager when I started, and she did so many things for me that went above and beyond her job description. I started going to therapy because of Kristen, and that is a huge part of why I can even live my life as a normal person today. But she doesn't like talking about herself, and she definitely doesn't like being on camera. But she has the most comprehensive knowledge of media and the store, and it's just the most amazing person, and she never wants to sing her own praises. But if I have to say anything about Vulcan, I have to talk about how amazing Kristen is. She carried the store. The fact that it functioned day to day for so long has to do with the fact that she's such an organized and together person that was devoted to the store. And I think it rode on her back for a really long time. And if you think about the times when Vulcan was really well stocked and organized and on top of things, it's because Kristen was busting her butt. And when Vulcan seemed kind of off and the shelves looked kind of empty, it's because Kristen wasn't there. So I definitely want to celebrate Kristen if we're talking about Vulcan. The family that owned Vulcan were really interesting. Diane Donnell is a really funny person. I was tasked with doing inventory at her house once, and she has all these dogs, and I'm terrified of dogs, and I just remember coming to her house and there's all these dogs barking, and they basically have this pack going on. And the manager at the time, Joe, had given me specific directions on how to get into the house without being killed. And so I went in and I started doing inventory, and I finished really quick because if you've ever worked at a video store before, you know all the titles by the spine. You don't actually have to read them. You know what every spine looks like, and you're like, oh, I know, I've seen that movie a million times. Every once in a while, you'll spot something that you actually have to read. But she was kind of surprised by that. And I remember finishing early, and she asked me if I wanted to stay and have some food with them. And she made me a green smoothie, and I sat down and had dinner with them. And it was really amazing just kind of being in their home and thinking like, oh, this is the family that owns Vulcan, and I'm just having dinner with them, and they're regular folks. There wasn't just a rivalry between Vulcan and I Love. There's also an internal rivalry between the South store and the 29th Street store. The 29th Street store, we're the original store. We are the cool guys, and the South store is just that other store. So that would come out in a lot of ways, but the best way would be if you called, if a customer was looking for a title and we didn't have it at the South store, we were in DOS, in basic point of sale software where you can't look up the other store, so we'd have to call. So if I ever called the North store, you'd dread who was going to pick up the phone, because they'd say, Vulcan. You say, oh, hey, this is Brian from the South store looking for, and they'd interrupt you and they'd be like, South store? What South store? There would always be some sort of joke about the South store and this huge diss on it. So in a lot of ways, to the 29th Street store, we South store people were less than them, or at worst just didn't exist. Another weird thing about Vulcan that now that it's closing, I can pretty openly talk about is the fact that we could drink on shift. And there was kind of a degree of how much can you moderate drinking and working. And a lot of people have to quit or got fired because they couldn't walk that line. But my favorite thing about the store was that we were open till 2 on weekends. And usually Kristen, the manager, worked the Saturday shift with Carrie, and the store would close, and I'd still be up at like 3 a.m. looking for something to do. So I'd drive by the store, and 80% of the time they would be out front drinking and hanging out. So I always could count on the 3 a.m. Crowd to be out front of Vulcan drinking and hanging out, and I appreciated that.